Good afternoon. Welcome to Book Lovers Corner for the 26th of November 2019, our 11th broadcast for this year, and we have one more to go, which will be for December's one. And because it is scheduled for December the 24th, we will be pre-recording it next week. So it will not be, I don't think, attended by a TV edition. We are broadcasting on the Wairarapa Community Access Station, 92.7 FM, Arrow FM 92.7, every Tuesday of the month from 3:30 to 4:30 throughout the year. And this is one of 12 community access radio stations in New Zealand. And we are sponsored by Elmo's Books, our wonderful independent bookshop in Carterton. You can listen to our program online by connecting with Arrow FM, or listen later via the podcast, live online by connecting in with Arrow FM, or listen later via a podcast which you can download onto your device, or through the Wairarapa TV Freeview Channel 41, as well as on YouTube. We'd appreciate any feedback you can by contacting the station's Facebook pages. I'm Valda Kirkwood. The other members of the team today are Gareth Rapson and Sue Lawrence. Welcome, Gareth. Welcome, Sue. And today we start, as usual, with a discussion of books we've read since last broadcast and news of books. And has anyone got any news of books?
Well, I'd like to hear from Sue. What's hot in Elmo's, as always?
Oh, well, I am thoroughly ill-prepared for this, but what's making the big piles, what is piling up on the new sales table, like the new book sales table, of course, are the new Margaret Atwood, Testaments. There's a new John Grisham, title I forget. Joe Nesbo, The Knife, that pile is way down now. If any of you are following Lucinda Riley's The Seven Sisters series, we're up to book 6, which I think is The Sun Sister. Anyway, it's got a bright orange cover, so you can't miss it. The shop is absolutely chocker with Christmas stock. It's all a bit overwhelming.
And from the buzz, what would you predict will be the big Christmas book?
Well, there's a new Jack Reacher, of course, and but you already know that. But I'm going to predict the book that I'm talking about, which is described by Australian booksellers as a Japanese sleeper. Make of that what you will.
Look forward to that, Sue. And also, of course, we have your summer reading guide.
Exactly, which I have omitted to bring, but good on you for doing so.
And it is just, I love looking through it and seeing, oh, I've read that and I've read that. Oh, that one, I must get that one out of the library. Oh, yes, that would be a good present for someone. And so do have a look for those of you who are in the Wairarapa region. It came out with
the midweek?
The midweek.
On the 13th.
Yes.
But as if copies are available in the shop.
Right.
And it is quite lovely that people bring them in with titles circled and saying, can I have a look at this?
It's a very, very valuable and timely product to have out.
Yeah. Well, we can't claim total responsibility for it because the wonderful Booksellers Association put this out, collate all this on behalf of the independent booksellers, and they work really hard with the publishers to get the titles and all the information ready in time, in a timely fashion. So it's a great product.
It is, and I thoroughly enjoy it. And I think that what I've got here is this last year's one or another edition
No,
of this year's.
That'll be a different year. That's
Well, I've been reading through that as well, and thoroughly enjoying that, because so they're worth keeping.
yeah.
Because often, you're reading changes during the year, and to look back on what was on offer last year, you think, oh, I should have caught up on that.
Yeah, I missed that one.
Yes. And I'm sorry, folk, I don't know if Michael's out there watching, but the TV edition fleetingly went to you just a few minutes ago, but it's come back here. And so I'm not sure.
Is it locked on you?
It is locked on me.
Oh, we've had that before.
Yes, and here's...
We're working on it, Velda, and there have been some shots of your guests.
Right.
Yeah, just carry on. It's a radio program.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
But the book that you're going to talk about has been a big seller. You wouldn't believe.
Right, the book I'm going to talk about is Bill Bryson's The Body, which is just a fascinating read.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe that should be such a popular selling book. I mean, we've got the Christmas stock in. I think all but one's gone. So it's phenomenal. He's phenomenal.
Well, he is, and Gareth has read it, and so when I'm talking about it, Gareth will interact with that as well, because I think we have both found it a fascinating read. And there's so much in it. I was very tempted at the weekend to come down and buy my own copy for reference.
Be quick.
For reference. So I looked it up and saw that there were 2 left in the bookshop, but they'll probably have gone by now.
Not sure.
It's a very impressive pile of little sticky notes there. So there's obviously some gems waiting us.
Yeah. So today, in fact, we might start with Bill Bryson's The Body. And many of you may be familiar with Bill Bryson, having written a lot of travel books. And it's very, very interesting that he has written...
It was his History of Everything that was, I think, which was obviously a huge worldwide seller.
Yeah.
But no, it's those Walking the Appalachian Trail books and the
Road to Little Dibbling.
The Road to Little Dibbling and all that.
And that was when he was trying to get his citizenship for Britain.
Right.
And he went all over Britain from Little Dribbling, and I can't remember. There was a reason why he started in he went to Little Dribbling. Right. Was that because it was the centre of? Can't remember what.
I can't remember either.
But he is a fascinating travel writer.
Yeah, and I mean he is someone who I think has an eye for a captivating detail or an anecdote, and is able to weave it in beautifully into whatever he's discussing, and has found a world readership. And what's interesting is it's so big in America.
Yeah.
And he's famous for that line, I was born in Des Moines, somebody had to be, that sort of...
And that's about the Thunderbolt Kid.
Yes.
And I got it as a CD and played it. I was driving from Westport down to Dunedin for a family wedding, and I played it all the way down and part of the way back. And it was just the most wonderful companion to driving down the length of the South Island. And he reads it. He's got a beautiful voice to listen to as well.
It's not like listening to you. I'm talking on the phone, isn't it? Us other motorists, I probably would rather you are focusing very carefully on, and not laughing at Bill Bryson jokes. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, talking books or audio or whatever, audio books are huge. Yeah.
And you sell, and almost sells a few?
Not really. We have enough trouble with the paper variety, but we will get them for people. But
yeah. Okay. Well, hey.
Right.
Tell us something about the body.
So the book is. I love the title of the book. The subtitle is "The Body: A Guide for Occupants," and so he has a quirky way of getting you to rethink what you think about things. And we occupy a body. And he has it written in a number of chapters, the first being how to build a human, next the outside skin and hair, then microbial you, the brain, the head, down the hatch, the mouth and the throat, etc., etc., etc. In the dissecting room, the skeleton, on the move, bipedalism and exercise, deep breath, the lungs and breathing. He just has a wonderful way of putting things to make you think about them.
Because it's a combination of history. I mean, there's this nice, searching for the telling little obscure but very funny fact, which makes you react to how we back in the day just looked at things. Have you got an example there? Just something to...
Yes, because, this is not at the moment a bit about the history, but it just gives you his quirky take on things. For example, it is an arresting thought that all that makes you lovely is deceased. When body meets air, we are all cadavers. Those outer skin cells are replaced every month. We shed skin copiously, almost carelessly, some 25,000 flakes a minute, over 1 million pieces every hour. But I've never thought of looking at you as a cadaver. And yet what I'm seeing is all dead skin.
It is microbiology, isn't it? Just which we can't see. The fact that we are actually in motion, and disintegrating. And that's. And then of course he gives us the history. Then he gives us a cutting edge authority on it from and he must have met some very interesting people. Not only just people in England, but they seem to be from all around the world. Whether he Skypes them or chats away to them, gets the real new interesting things. And if we think we kind of know stuff, but in fact the book reveals we know very little.
We know absolutely nothing, really. It's quite extraordinary. He says in 2013, the Royal Society of Chemistry Cambridge Science Festival had a competition to build a body. How much would it cost to build a body? And they came up 59 elements. Carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, calcium and phosphorus are 99.1%. So you've got 0.9% with all this other stuff, which we can't do without. So you've got molybdenum and vanadium, which reminds me, as you're going through of the periodic table, and who's that? Tom Lehra's periodic table. I'd love to be able to do that. Tin, copper, chromium. In chromium, you only have 30 atoms of chromium, but they are essential. Cobalt, you have 20 atoms of cobalt. I mean,
we are amazing.
I mean,
how amazing we are.
We have got no idea how amazing we are. And then you've got to look at the prices. So oxygen, and this is of course, because he's based in the UK, these are in pounds, so we'd need to double everything. But oxygen would cost £8.90. Hydrogen, £16. Nitrogen, 27p. Carbon, 44,300. Calcium, phosphorus and potassium, £47,000 each. Thorium, because it's £2,000 a gram, we only need the tiniest of it, which is costing 21p. And you total up all these bits and pieces, and it comes to £96,546.79p. But then you've got to add in your GST and your labour. And so it's to look at it that way is just a very different way of looking at it. And I mean, I used to teach chemistry, I used to teach the body. How I wished I had known about this. But in fact, a lot of that is just recent knowledge. And I think, as Gareth was saying, you know, he incorporates recent knowledge, but also the history.
And the history is dark. We did
absolutely.
extraordinary things. You know, the health business was... the tales in it are quite... I mean, they're funny, but they're chilling, but you find yourself smiling away at some of the dumb things that we believed. And
you have to have a sense of humour to work in health, that's for sure.
Absolutely. For example, when he talks about the brain, and in particular epilepsy, he does a bit on epilepsy, and he was saying the 4,000 years of epilepsy was based on ignorance, superstition, and stigmatism. The last 100 years on knowledge, superstition, and stigmatism. So knowledge can change things, but it doesn't change a lot.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And I could not believe in 1956 it was illegal in 17 United States for epileptics to marry. And in 18 US states, they were involuntary euthanized. Sterilised.
Yeah.
I'm sure that. I'm
got your bills mixed up.
No, but they could possibly have been euthanised as well. Nothing would surprise me. And they weren't repealed until 1980.
Yeah.
In UK, epileptics were. That was grounds for annulment of marriage until 1970. I mean, unbelievable.
that is not that long ago. And
It is not long ago. It's all very fresh in our memories.
we were better in New Zealand. I can't recall us having stigmatised epileptics like that.
I don't know.
There probably was no legislation at all about it, probably. So that whole idea of putting a monetary value on a person, I mean, you kind of think more people thought about that, you know, in this moment of mindless passion that they have when a person is conceived.
What
Would that change anything?
But hey, an insurance company would value life in a whole different way, and the payouts sometimes reflect that.
Yeah, but I'm talking about average people that often don't put a high price on.
No.
Well, look at the way human lives are valued or not valued.
Yeah.
Any other little gems that caught your eye?
Well, lots of extraordinary historical bits, like, you know, our we've got skin cells called Meissner cells, and they were invented by a German guy, or the name was discovered and they were named by a guy called Meissner. And there was another guy that he worked with at the time who really thought that, in fact, he had discovered them. And he was really, really cross. And they had been good friends. They parted company totally because of that tension between one naming Meissner cells and the other not being allowed to have part of it. And so what Bryson was saying, how a fight can start over the tiniest of things.
Yeah, but it's a big deal to a scientist, isn't it?
Absolutely. And so there was so much. People who've missed out on Nobel Prizes, like the X and Y chromosome, for example, and there was a guy who was studying chromosomes again in Germany. There was a lot of work done in Germany in this area, and this particular guy saw this odd, different sort of chromosome, and so because it was mysterious, he named it the X chromosome. And then there was this woman, Nettie Stevens, from the States, who was working, Henking had been working on fire wasps, but Nettie Stevens was working on mealworms, and they were looking at the sexual organs of these particular beasts. And she discovered another aloof chromosome. And so she continued on with the alphabetical numbering as Henking had started. And so she called it the Y chromosome. But then she realised that they determined the gender. Now, if it had happened later, it's a Nobel Prize winning insight. But she didn't get a Nobel Prize because it was too early in the day.
And the people who missed out on the credit, and the people who stole their workers' ideas and took all the credit for them. I mean, they're delightful tales, and it gives you an insight that it's nothing's fair in this world.
No. So I was wondering, why he wrote that book, because you think, oh, that's a departure for him, but it's actually a tale of crime and passion, clearly, and
very, very
a perfect
clearly.
book.
Absolutely.
I think it was driven out of the history of everything, and the human body was a chapter in that. And I think he probably realised there was a lot more to say. Well, there is. Look at the size of the book, and that's a great case where suddenly there's so much. So he would have had, in the history of everything, a small section, and then developed the thinking in this. But I must admit, it was the diseases that also, the things that that can do us in, is kind of salutary as you read about it. Also very funny in places, but also very, it's endlessly informative.
And I think one of the things too is he points out very clearly that in fact women's bodies, very little is known about women's bodies, even now. And so just a 9 to noon quite recently, there was a woman called Gabrielle Jackson who's written a book called Pain and Prejudice, and she has written a book on her journey on endometriosis, which is still a mystery. And so a lot of the research, as it has done in a lot of human development, has been done on men and translated or just transferred onto women, when in fact they're very different bodies. And similarly, heart attacks, men have heart attacks, but women's, the clues that they're having a heart attack are quite different from men's symptoms. So
the men, though, you probably have to agree, are kind of experts on women's bodies. So they seem to think they know a lot. Well, we do know a lot. So there we go.
No, I don't. I think, Gareth, that I don't. Yeah.
But hey, could you tell, is there something there about the end of life? If I remember, he had some great telling sort of little thoughts.
Well, you were saying before, while we were meeting, that there was something about the end of
books.
So what were you saying about?
There was a recent letter from the listener about how science books like this often fail right at the end when they get into predictions about the future. I never got that feeling when I read the book that was a failing, because I thought he was so up to date and talking about things right on the cusp of new understanding. But anyway, you've got something.
So,
there?
well, his last paragraph, and we'll end with this. For those who choose to be buried, decomposition in a sealed coffin takes a long time, between 5 and 40 years, according to one estimate. And that's only if you haven't been embalmed. The average grave is visited only for about 15 years, so most of us take a lot longer to vanish from the earth than from others' memories. A century ago, only about 1 person in 100 was cremated, but today 3/4 of Britons and 40% of Americans are. If you're cremated, your ashes will weigh about 5 pounds or 2 kilos, and that's you gone. But it was good while it lasted, wasn't it?
Yeah. Terrific book.
So I recommend Bill Bryson's The Body. It takes a lot of reading, but it is a book that you can actually dip into and out of. And that's one reason for actually having it on the bookshelf.
So you've concentrated on the sort of the interesting little stories and scuttlebutt, but there's got to be a lot of technical stuff in there.
Well,
I think he's very good on that.
Yeah,
in that he
manages
knows
it
his
very
readers,
well.
Yeah, and it's by no means hard to access. So
Okay.
it reads really well.
and he's very good at analogies.
Yeah.
And so he was talking for example, about viruses. And in fact, a virus, if you blow a virus up to a golf ball, then a human will be 500 miles high. And a bacteria will be the size of a beach ball. So he deals with the technical bits by using analogies that we can, in fact, that can help us construct meaning from it.
And does he have anything to say? I mean, he notes the fact that women have not been such a subject for investigation and study as men. Does he say that, but there's a good time coming?
Not that I saw it. I didn't read that. No, it's more factual.
Okay. Just wondering.
Well, that would be, yeah. So that's that. We've got. Shall we have some music, or would one of you like to do your first book now, and then we'll save some music, and come back to you and.
I don't mind.
Would you like to do your book on coffee?
Okie dokie.
Thank you.
So, I mean, I have actually got two books, and the reason I've got two books is that by sheer coincidence, they have a common subject, and that is time travel. And fantasy and science fiction and stuff like that is not a subject about which I care to read all that often. And I think we kind of forget that there's a real history of books about time travel. Like, and I've noted, like The Time Machine, H.G. Wells, like A Christmas Carol, Charles Dickens, and on television, Doctor Who, on movies, Back to the Future, and in novels, in fiction, more modern fiction, I guess the standout would be things like Diane Gabaldon's Outlander series and Audrey Niffenegger,
Yeah, The Time Traveller's Wife,
which I thought was the most pretentious book I've ever read. But anyway, that's just me. But the book that I want to start with is called, and there's a copy, and it's a delightful little cover of a table in a cafe, two chairs and a cat, and it's called Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. Now, I don't know much about him, but he is apparently a playwright, and this story was originally a play, and you can kind of see that because there's like 4 acts in it, which I thought was interesting. So this is a really short novel in translation in English, and I've not read a lot of Japanese fiction, so it took some getting used to. Even though it's a slight book and it's simply written, you think, it's sort of, there's something different about it. I suppose that something is Japanese. But anyway, so it's set in a small and very old basement cafe in the back streets of Tokyo called Funicular, would you believe? The cafe is famous for its coffee, but also for its ability for its customers to travel back in time, as long as they stick to the rules. And the rules are, you must sit in a special seat in this cafe, which is mostly, you discover after a while, occupied by a ghost that you can see. They must return before the coffee gets cold, or there will be dire consequences.
Hence the name of the book.
absolutely. And they must understand that nothing will change as a result of their travel. So it's an exploration rather than you're an explorer rather than a change agent, if you like. Yeah.
Which is not the common.
No, because most of the other ones, they travel back in time for a reason, with the intent of saving somebody from a quirk of history, like the Outlander series. They wanted to change the outcome of the Jacobite Rebellion, and thereafter the American Revolution, and yeah, they were good, but they failed.
So you can go back for minutes.
Yes, these are not great historical ventures. They are quite brief.
So they're
both recent.
The people, the characters in it are going to go back for just minutes to.
Yes,
and
in order to resolve something.
Okay.
Yeah. So the book contains the stories of 4 characters, as I've said, and for example, a girl wonders why her boyfriend is going to America. So what's the reason behind the end of this relationship? A husband has Alzheimer's and his wife wants to travel back to talk to him before he lost the power of speech. A girl wants to see her dead sister and resolve some of the issues that are happening in relation to that time and also in the present. And a mother wants to meet the daughter she has never met, which is the most interesting and probably most affecting story. So the stories are told really simply in straightforward English, and the actions and conversations of the staff provide the continuity between the 4 acts, if you like. The unlikely time travel device and the presence of the ghost are presented as part of the way things are done in this cafe. So there's no great hoo-ha about it. It can happen, and it does happen, and no one gets overexcited. The content of the stories can be quite emotional and affecting, but they're told in a very unemotional and flat way, which is kind of interesting. And the sentences are generally quite short and factual. There's no great emotion about things. People wonder why things happen, but beyond that...
It immediately struck me that it sounds like something you could have on stage. Was this a play first, then a book?
Yes, which is unusual, I think. A play first and then a novel.
Right, because you could see the setup quite comfortably.
Absolutely, and a small, enclosed,
small, intimate
setting.
And they're sort of fading in and out.
Yeah,
and incidences happening.
Yeah, exactly right.
Okay, so when you read it, do you see it visually like that? Could you see it kind of just unfolding in your mind, or was it something else?
No, he does describe, he goes into description of, what the place looked like and what people looked like. So, yeah, you do get it, even though it's slightly unusual.
Well, I think that's time to break for a quick music interlude now, and it is from Kaja, which is a Nelson company, a group of women who sing, and in honour of Bill Bryson's body, I've chosen Feet of a Dancer.
Looks a bit...
I hope you can sing in the rain. I hope you find all the easy answers to your pain. It won't be easy, but what can I say? There will be trouble on the way, and around every corner there'll be terror. But always remember that we're here. And I hope you find the feet of a dancer. I hope you can sing in the rain. I hope you find all the easy answers to your pain. I hope you find love and affection, someone who cares. I hope you find all the right direction and there's nothing too dear. But always remember that we're here. And I hope you find the feet of a dancer. I hope you can sing in the rain. I hope you find all the easy answers to your pain. I hope you find love and affection, someone who cares. I hope you find all the right direction everywhere, everywhere. Even when the rain comes falling down, you know it's falling down on you. And I hope you find the feet of a dancer. I hope you can sing in the rain. I hope you find all the easy answers to your pain. I hope you find love and affection, someone who cares. I hope you find all the right direction everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. Always remember that we're here, everywhere. Always remember that we're here.
Welcome back to Book Lovers Corner, Arrow FM 92.7 in Masterton. And we will continue on with Sue.
Yep.
And your intriguing sort of combination of books.
My second time travel book, which is a much more orthodox story, I guess. It's called The Little Shop of Found Things by an American writer, Paula Braxton, whose work I don't know. But the book itself is set in England, and there are two heroines, I guess one main heroine. Xanthi and her mother are in the antiques business, and they move out of London to a different to a new shop to them in Marlborough. So the time travel starts to come in when we know quite early on in the story that Xanthi has a physical reaction to some antiques, some special pieces. They sort of talk to her or whatever. But this time, time travel is also brought into the picture, and there is a resident ghost in the shop. So the resident ghost is very aggressively concerned that something is done about the fate of her daughter. Unfortunately, her daughter lived in the 17th century. But because of Xanthi's reaction to a particular piece of silver and her discovery that she is able to use that to step back in time, she does go to try and save this young girl. So this is a bit like the Outlander series, if you're familiar with that, in terms of, sort of romance, history, and magic, but it's altogether a far tamer version than the epic that is the Outlander series. I think it would be a good story for early teens, 14, 15-year-old girls who like a light story, nothing too demanding, a bit interesting about the history, or it can do anyone, on a beach. You're not going to bother if you lose it. Well, that's a bit damning with faint praise.
I was actually, you took the words out of my mouth.
But you're not going to bother. It's a light read.
But it reads well?
Oh, she writes well. Yes,
Yeah,
she
yeah,
writes well, and I think it's reasonably well researched, and so on. But it's not going to change your life.
Yeah. No, well, I can remember now. You talking about it reminds me. I thought I'd read it, but now I've gone back and I can remember it, and I enjoyed it. It's nice and light, and
Yeah, it is.
you don't have to think about it. Unlike Bill Bryson's The Body and so on.
Oh.
Now, Gareth, you've got an interesting offering for us today.
Let's hope. It's a trilogy. Now, there's two.
A trilogy of two.
A trilogy of two, with the first one, Imperium, Lustrum, Dictator. And, I mean, they would total probably... And it's one big story, which would probably be like 1,400 pages. Written by Robert Harris. The first one like 2004, 2009 for Lustrum, 2015 for Dictator. They were all books of the year in the UK, and hugely popular. I mean, he's known for his historical, often World War II, Enigma, Fatherland, but also his historical thrillers, like you were mentioning.
I love Pompeii.
Pompeii.
I remember reading that.
And there's one called The Ghost, I think, which has been made into a movie. Pompeii was a movie. But this one is the great story of Cicero. Now, the narrator of the three books is Tiro, his slave, confidential secretary, who in reality lived, and he invented many of the ideas of shorthand. So all those little things that we see in Latin, and the et ceteras and the little ampersands and all that sort of stuff, Tiro invented them, and he's the right-hand man. The first book, Cicero has arrived from out of the provinces. He's trained himself down in Athens, so he's been and returned to Italy, to Rome. He's a lawyer, and he's on the make, and he is clever, ambitious, and he has Tiro right beside him, who has this amazing skill to be able to capture, remember, and record. And he will travel with Cicero right through the story. Rome is a republic. It's got ancient ideas and principles it's living by, and it has a senate, a huge senate of about 600 senators, and they compete and vote to become the council. There are 2 councillors appointed. You get it for a year, and then you give them part of the empire to go out and make money from, and then 2 new ones are appointed. And the first book is about Cicero's growth through his tremendous oratory, sensational trials, as Rome is constantly in a sort of fervour of change. But he is the voice, and becomes the voice of the Senate, and becomes in the end of the first book the council. But he's had to fight off there's these generals who are out there, Caesar, Pompey. Second book, Lustrum. Here we go. We get Cicero is running the country. Pompey has been the most successful general in the east. Caesar has been out in Spain, Gaul, Germany, Britain. Has arrived back. These are powerful men now with powerful armies looking to take control. There's Crassus, the richest man in Rome. Cato, a sort of political fanatic. Catalina, a sort of psychopath patrician. Claudius, who sort of runs the mob, who's a sort of playboy sort of guy. And there's a story of alliances, betrayals, cruelties, their seductions, their brilliance. And all the way through, Cicero is trying to keep the ideas of the Republic alive. But there are these men who want power. They want it all. And there's the idea that they think they can become the first emperor. And in the third book, Dictator, builds onto how the Republic dies. There's the story of the death of the assassination of Caesar, and then the rise of his son, who comes, the alliances and falling apart, the betrayals, Mark Antony fleeing back to Egypt with Cleopatra, and his consequent, the son of Caesar setting all scores, sent all the people who were involved in his assassination of Caesar are in fact hunted down, and right near the end, a sort of hit squad arrives to take out our man Cicero, and he is killed on the beach and his head returned to. And the book is violent and terrific. It's a study of its power, and it's very, very, and it's a sort of clash of legal thriller and political thriller, set at a time where the gods are waning. It's BC, so it's just before the birth of Christ, and there's sort of a vacuum of ideas apart from the idea of the Roman Empire. Sorry?
Is that, I mean, we're in a similar situation today, aren't we?
Oh, all right. People have pointed out that you get these sort of characters, the sort of the contemporary people today. So let me find a little note about them. Yes,
Is that
well, they're the equivalents of Putins and Johnsons and Trumps exist in these days, you know.
But can you find it? Because that was really what you read out to us
right
beforehand.
I will find it. Well, here's another point too. For some reason, Tiro created copies, and they were put into these the sort of there's a word for it, the
amphora,
and sealed, and they were kept with various families, and the correspondence and the memoirs and the history of the speeches somehow survived. You know, fragments.
That's extraordinary,
and enough of it, so they had a really good picture. Now remember, sort of Robert Graves visited this with the Emperor's Stories and I Claudius, but this is a story before that, before those emperors arrived.
Well, I've got a coffee mug with a Cicero comment on it, which I really like. What you need in life is a library and a garden. And for me, at this age and stage, I love drinking out of that coffee mug. It sort of, and I thought he was a guy who knew about life. Yeah. But what you're talking about, Cicero, there doesn't sort of match up with that.
No, well, no, it's. He was full of witticism, clever observations that were constantly being repeated and written up and posted around Rome, and people loved him because he was just so clever, and he would say things that resonated with them, but then he could move the whole Senate with his oratory, and they'd be hell-bent on going down this trail. By the time he'd finished with them, they were going somewhere else, and it was just his power to move men's minds.
No wonder the generals didn't like him.
Yeah.
No, and they often had to camp outside the city and be waited. The Senate would make them wait, and they would try and control them, and then they would. But I mean, they got so big and so powerful. It's kind of sad as the Republic fades and the rise of it. Now I'm just looking for that line here, if I can find it. I don't have it there. The last words of it are kind of Tiro. It says, all that remains of us is what is written down. And I guess it's a little comment about books, is that the time of what survives out of our times are the books now that we're all engaging with and reading. In this, the characters Cicero and Tiro wonder what people will think 1,000 years in the future of them. And write and think in this sort of contemporary sort of way. I mean, even though it's actually 2,000 years.
Yeah. Yes. Well, here you are reading about them, and I'm drinking coffee out with a quote on it that Cicero gave, and so I mean they're not lost.
But they underestimated the progress of civilization, didn't they? 1,000 years, most people couldn't read, so.
Anyway, compelling narrative, terrific story, and it's murder, lust, greed, corruption, and I think if you like
another day at the office,
if you think and you want to draw contemporary lessons from what was happening then into our own current world, it's all there. And
so Western civilization finishes with a head on the beach somewhere.
Well, They did there.
They did.
And Cicero lived a good life. He lived a long life. I mean, Tero, in fact, lives an extraordinary long life and is able to look back on it. But no, totally. I mean, it was one of these books where I was in a friend's place, had nothing to read, went to her bookcase, and there they were sitting, and I thought I've heard about those books. Sat down, was absolutely hooked. Like 10 days later, emerged from Roman times, and totally satisfied. Absolutely thought it was something I wouldn't normally pick up, but I trusted Robert Harris to deliver a terrific tale. And he has a new book. I mean, he's still publishing books today.
Yes. His new one, who's the title of, is it in the catalogue? I'm not sure if it's in the summer reading catalogue, but it's a very dystopian tale. I can't remember the title.
So
maybe we haven't got time to look for it now.
no, I think we might. Bernard Cornwell. No.
But another good writer of historical fiction.
Yes.
Here's the point. You get this sort of self-righteous war criminal in the book. As Putin, the mad autocrat. As Boris Johnson, the genius of mediocrity, Trump. So there are these sort of characters back in the day who seem to line up. And this, I'm sure I was seeing Tony Blair there, and Gordon Brown, and Margaret Thatcher in these characters, and it is very, very clever there.
Very interesting that you mentioned international characters. Did none of the characters resonate with the New Zealand context?
Oh no, our politicians are so wonderful, so that would never ever happen. But there was some great. If you were taken to prison, if you arrived as a defeated, leader of another country, you were taken to a prison. But in the middle of the celebration, that was called the casa, which was the name of the prison. So you go, incarceration, prison.
Oh yes,
yes. And you were lowered into a pit, and there were people there with big leather aprons who would strangle you and put you on hooks and all that. This is not for the faint-hearted at points, but it is before the big games. The Colosseum has yet to be built, but they still have gladiators who are kind of like mercenaries that everybody surrounds themselves with, and then there are armies. Terrific book, and I hope it continues to find an audience. I believe it'll be the great way of looking at in a modern way, of a way to access history in a way that's kind of special.
Well, I think you underestimate the power of fiction to teach us stuff.
Well, I think that's how, I'm not basically a historian, but that's how I learn my history, is through novels. I learn a lot more through novels rather than straight history. So can you give us the names of the books again, please?
Robert Harris, Imperium, Lustrum, which means 5 years, and Dictatorship are the three.
And Sue?
I had Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi.
Could you put it up? Hold it up?
Did you not see that?
Thank you.
Okay. There's more to that book than meets the eye, that's what I'll say. And this one, The Little Shop of Found Things by Paula Braxton.
Thank you. And the one I focused on was Bill Bryson's The Body, which a guide for occupants, which is very interesting and is great for reading straight through, or as I found it, just pottering into and going out and pottering into and going out. And so well worthwhile, a good Christmas present for a lot of people. And thank you, Sue, yet again. Thank you, Gareth. And we will, I'll see you both next week for our pre-recording for our Christmas program for December the 24th, because we will not be available on 24th for a live broadcast. Thank you.
Thank you.